Good morning, friends. It's good to be here. Beautiful readings today. Thank you, Sharmila, for choosing that Whispers and the music, each piece, right? I'm always so grateful for the richness and the abundance of our gatherings on Sunday, our Sunday service. There's so much to it. So, I reflected a lot on Shanti's talk last week and her invitation to read, now, is the immortality of Christ? The promise of immortality. Thank you, Shanti. I'm looking right at her. To read that, to go back in and read what Swamiji says about it, which I did, and then read what Swamiji says about this reading. And, naturally, all the readings would go together. You may have noticed that. They build on each other, these themes. And so I did that. Actually, I will say humorously, I have this experience occasionally where I read and read and read and read in every book, and I suddenly find myself, surrounded by all these different books with the perfect sentence. Well, that's it. That's the perfect sentence. And I can't bring them all. In fact, finally this morning, the guidance was, don't bring any, right? I brought a few. Sometimes it's so hard, right? But I left them in the minister's room because the guidance was the same. Don't bring any. You don't need that. But, each of these readings talking about ultimately how to make this something that really makes sense to my own journey, these teachings. And then when I'm sharing it, how to say it in a way that hopefully can help it make sense for you in your journey. So part of what I reflected on, the theme of today's reading, did God manifest creation or become it? And what I wrote about for myself as I reflected on that a little bit of, okay, when I create something, it's such a beautiful, wonderful experience, and Swamiji encourages us to tune into that flow of creativity and invite the power of God to move through us. Shanti was sharing about that, I don't know if it was last week, but one of her talks when she had this realization that cooking is a way in which she taps into that creative flow. I've experienced her delicious meals, and she does. But what I reflected on is that when I create something, there's this whole journey, this process, and I will say for myself, a lot of it feels like jumping off a diving board. I don't really know where I'm going. I don't know what's going to happen, and then it's created, and I stand in awe of look at that. That's amazing. Not that it's so beautiful or wonderful, but just that, it does have a beauty to it, and it's a sweetness I share with God. But there is a difference between creating something and feeling that the creation is outside of myself. And there it is, there's the creation, and hopefully infused with divine energy, hopefully infused with something that others can feel and resonate with. Swami talks about art in that way, right? In one of his books, he shares that any art you bring into your house, in fact, all the items in your house, however many they are, you should feel like a friendship with them. You should look at them and just feel a sense of connection and not have anything in your home that doesn't inspire you, it doesn't uplift you, right? And the reading today is that God is the seed of all creation and that he actually became creation. He didn't just manifest it. And so I had a deeper understanding of when I think of being a creation of God's, I feel like there's God and I was created. And, okay, the essence is there, but I do feel separation versus God became me. God became me, right? It's our teaching that God became us. God is experiencing the one through the many. And Master, Swami tells the story of Master saying to one of the disciples, you have a bitter taste in your mouth. And he was startled. How do you know? Well, I'm in your mouth. I'm in your mouth, I'm in your mind, I'm in your body. He was omnipresent. So he was in the many. He was the one in the many. And I just invite you, for your own self, maybe it will be a nice way. I mean, it's taken me deeper to ponder that. What does it mean that it's God experiencing all of this? We say God is the doer. We say it. I mean, we know the teachings, many of us. They might be new to someone here. But part of the power of the teaching in this particular reading is vibration. The way we'll know God and God's presence when we go within is we will resonate with it, right? And it is interesting to have a human experience, to walk through the world, and it sure seems real, this material realm. And Master said that the ego is our soul identified in the material realm. It's identified with the body, with this incarnation, these life experiences, and it just hasn't yet fully realized that it is divine, right? The nature of our soul, divinity. All I can say for myself is that it's a practice to take the teachings, to sit with them, to walk with them, to go to classes. As I often say, many different stories come to mind whenever I'm preparing for a talk. And I was reminded of a saints series we do every year. A series on the saints are so inspiring if you haven't had a chance to go, and they're ever new, right? So this year, Lakshmi and Shanti did them. And I remember this was several years ago in one of the saints series, in being in person in a circle. And I don't remember who the speaker was in this particular class, but they were talking about one of the saints, and they were so animated and deep in their sharing of this saint. And I noticed at a certain point, I was leaning way forward in my seat toward the person speaking. And then I noticed so was the person next to me. Like we were leaning in. It was just so precious and powerful. And then I noticed you could have heard a pin drop on the carpet. Like everyone was so silent, so yearning to know and to experience what was being shared. I have this experience at Ananda many, many, many times, and it just happened again yesterday, a blessing of the baby, Srinivas and Sahiti's baby. And we were invited, everyone was invited to come and offer blessings for this family and for the soul who's coming into a spiritual family. I got to know so much more about them. And at a certain point, as happens many times in Ananda events, I was overwhelmed with what it is to be with others seeking so strongly, caring so much about, and here we all are, here you all are, right? There's so much power in satsang. Yogananda said it's the second blessing. Guru is the first blessing, to have a guru in your life, to know your guru, to have the presence, to understand, to recognize the need for a guru. And second to that is the company of others who love God, who love the truth. And I was reminded of something Swamiji said about vibration and about, it was always very interesting to me, and then I've noticed it, right? I heard the teaching and then I've observed it. He said that people vibrationally are more alike than they are in terms of externals, right? Now, oftentimes vibration and external goes together. So accountants have a particular vibration, and they'd recognize each other and feel comfortable with each other. There's just something about what drove them there to that, right? And whoever they were, wherever they were in the world, my father was a physicist, a mathematician, and he traveled around the world, and I saw that occasionally. I'd meet his colleagues, and there really was. So you could just see it, right? They got each other. And my dad told me I had a lovely relationship with him. He rarely talked specifically about his work, and he just said no one would understand it. which was true. I mean, he just did very elevated theorems, and he didn't actually identify himself that way, which was also fascinating. It was something he did that he loved, and he was so appreciative that he found what he loved to do, and he had a great talent for it. But if you met him, gourmet cooking was his hobby, and he always wanted to know about you. What are you doing? And so why am I saying that? The vibration. So the other thing Swami said is that ministers will feel very comfortable, right? So accountants feel comfortable, ministers will, whatever the path, right? Those who love God, if we can stay close to the vibration rather than the difference. And I was reflecting on pilgrimage and that experience. One of the things I love about pilgrimage is that, for one thing, you're with people from all over the world. So I've gone on Ananda pilgrimages. So I'm with the Ananda group, which is lovely and beautiful, but we go into these settings where people from everywhere are there. And energy of devotion and abandonment of self, right? That's the thing that's always, my first experience of it was awe and joy, right? Like, oh, okay, I kind of was learning from others on my first pilgrimage. How do we do this? Right? It was my first Ananda pilgrimage, and so watching others and let go. That's what you do, right? And I just watched people touch the rock, touch the place, and I thought, I'm free. I can do that, right? Like, this is the place. This is the moment. Go all in. And that's how we awaken. Being in the company of others who are going all in, right? That power. And there's just so many beautiful opportunities to experience it and then go deeper. I think of the story that Jyotish and Devi tell of being with Swamiji, walking with him, which they did many times in the garden at Crystal Hermitage. And, there was I'm rereading, many of us do this. I have so many books around me, but I'm rereading Narayani's beautiful story of her relationship serving Swamiji. And so I'm reminded of that because Jyotish and Devi, not surprisingly, have that same, in my observance, ability to be very sensitively attuned to Swami when they were with him. So if he was in silence, they were in silence, right? They were following his cue. So they were walking in silence, and he stopped and said, "That's what he meant," right? And then they didn't know what that meant, but they didn't want to break the silence, so they walked further. And then Swami felt to share. He said, 50 years ago, Master said something to me. I just understood what he meant by that. And what a beautiful lesson, right? This ability, like when I was reading the reading and I thought, becoming, I know this teaching, I've heard it before. I will, hopefully hear it again and listen and take it in. But I just for a moment wondered, God is I don't even, words fail is what I'll say. But reflecting on it, I could feel the power of it and the vibration of it. And I was reminded, so this idea that vibrationally we'll find our way home. We'll find our way home. God, Helen and Kamala Devi gave the most beautiful sharing about how they came to this path and how this path has blessed them. And they had a tiny window of time to do it, 10 minutes. And boy, we were sharing a little bit about it in the minister's room because Helen was in there to just, that I was so aware as I was listening to their story, how each one of us who've come here today, who were at that event, we have a personal story in which somehow the masters have gotten our attention over and over and over again, hopefully, right? Keep getting my attention, right? The beautiful reading, it might have been that night, but Master talking about I will come to you. I will be in your tears. I will smile in your mind, right? I will speak to you. I will speak to you. So never feel that God, the masters, are separate from us. I will say it does often feel like that to me, just because of my ego being in my body. So it's not wrong. Master said, in fact, in terms of desires, there is a perfect desire, which is to want to know God. So, I often, my prayers, I do feel like I know God's in there. I know God's me, but I still am praying, outwardly. I am, to awaken your presence inwardly. I think, that's the point. Like, okay, call to that. And the reading today and the song, What is Love? This practice of training ourselves to see God and experience God in everything. So love, it's not an easy thing. I think it can trip. Well, I was tripped up by it, so I'll speak personally. Meaning, and Sri Yukteswar, he talks about the heart. This is the tricky thing with the heart, is how do we awaken our heart and be deeply connected to the pure experience of divine love? And what I will say in my journey with it, in my practice of it, is there's this expression, you know it when you experience it, right? Like, you know it when you see it. And so what I will say is that the moments of selflessness, I recognize the difference. When, to love. So part of I'll practice that with our pets. Right? So pets, you can just love them so much, right? And so we had, I've had pets throughout my life, but Surya was a kitty that we got to adopt, and every morning we'd have special sadhana together. He was just that kind of kitty. Those who knew him know that, right? He'd look right at you. He just loved connecting. And I would always just be giving him to God, loving him and giving him to God. And I'd say, you're with me for a short time, right? I sure do love you. I sure appreciate you. Such a blessing. You're just like, I told him, you're like a pony on Christmas morning. That's what he felt like for me. But I recognized, I have to be careful in loving that much because, I don't want him to be there for a short time. I don't want that to be true. It is true. Shanti and I are going to be leading a class next week, Death, Dying, Karma, and Reincarnation, really one of the most powerful courses. It's been a long time since it's been offered. She and I were meeting and talking about it, and she was reminding me of Yudhishthira and the Gita's statement, what's the most surprising thing? He's asked that question. Well, that you see people all around you dying, and you think it won't happen to you. Right? You just think, this delusion. I mean, in one sense, it's hard to live in the knowing of it, right? How to balance that. But there is power in recognizing impermanence. There is power in that. I took a class up at the Expanding Light a number of years ago. Mangala was guiding us through this practice of non-attachment. And she said, write down a list of things you care deeply about, right? 1 to 10 or 1 to 5. And then practice imagining not having it. Just try to breathe into imagining not having it. And she said, now don't pick the most important thing, right? Because that's too hard. It's just, you just feel the attachment. Pick a smaller thing and practice it. So again, I invite you with that practice. It's very powerful for me. I still practice it. We have a new kitty, Bhima. I still practice it. James. I practice it. I practice it because loving is that pathway of awakening, right? All our masters say this. Sri Yukteswar said, we can't take one step on the path toward God without the heart being awakened. It has to be awakened. But don't stay there. Don't stay there. Go here. Bring it here. Lift it here and ask for help with that. I'll maybe wrap up with this. I was sitting, this is years ago, early in my work as a spiritual. I offer intuitive counseling, which is spiritual counseling, yoga, and meditation all together. This master's work I feel he gave me to do in just my little version of it. But I was sitting with a student and listening to her. And in the midst of listening, I suddenly felt a wave of of perfect love. And that's what I mean by selflessness, it's difficult to put words to, but what I felt in that moment was how much God loved this soul. So much. And I just got to experience what St. Francis's prayer, Master said the channel's blessed by that which flows through it. All of our seva is to train our consciousness to be a channel so we can feel it come through us and awaken within us. And it was a moment, and I remember thinking, what I knew is I liked her very much. So I liked her a lot, right? I loved her actually, but this love was bigger than that. And as I felt it, I felt I was being given a gift to know that's how God loves all of us. And later she was saying with me, I was praying to God, praying to God, praying to God. And I just felt like, boy, God really does listen to every one of our prayers. So this practice of what is love in our song, in the readings that I was looking at and revisiting of the teachings, is to do that which helps to awaken love and joy and a sense of optimism. That's what Swami said, is that hope and optimism and joy, these are reflections of divine energy. So do that which awakens it. And then just imagine, that's my invitation, just imagine what does it mean for for you to be a manifestation of God, not a creation, but actually manifestation, and just see how that might speak to you and help you in your journey.
In India there lived by the banks of a stream a hermit whose prayers chose applause for their theme. He gazed at the flowers and he smiled at the sun. Then he clapped with delight. Lord, he cried, oh, well done. Well done, Lord, oh, very well done. The mountains that laugh with the gypsy clouds, the fields smile to welcome that sun. All nature sings praises aloud. The fields smile to welcome the sun. All nature sings praises aloud. The trees dance to show their elation. A day on God's earth has begun. And every true heart in creation in speechless wonder is bound. And every true heart in creation in speechless wonder is bound. Well done, Lord, oh, very well done. The joy that you planted in children's hearts, the thrill known in bearing a son, the hope when a trial departs. The thrill known in bearing a son, the hope when a trial departs. The gladness of men in their neighbors, of youth and its victories won. Our joys are the proof of your labors. How wonderful, Lord, are your arts. Our joys are the proof of your labors. How wonderful, Lord, are your arts. Well done, Lord, oh, very well done. At last I've discovered the mystic key. The world's joy, oh, secretive one, replies to your sweetness in me. The world's joy, oh, secretive one, replies to your sweetness in me. For here in my heart lies the answer, your love shedding light like the sun. Our life seems to live like a dancer, when gazing I see only thee. Our life seems to live like a dancer, when gazing I see only thee.